What's up everybody and welcome back to a new YouTube channel video. Today, I want to discuss a few house rules that I had the idea to imply to Bakugan. You can say for yourself if you like them or not by watching this video. And of course, these house rules are not mandatory. If you don't want to use them, it's your choice. But I think after you've seen this video, you might actually think the same way as me and thinking that these rules might actually be quite useful. So, those house rules, of course, are only to be used only during one duel and only if both players are agreed on them and if they want to use them, of course. And on that fact, these rules can only be applied to the TCG version of Bakugan Battle Brawlers and not the combo versus TCG. Okay. Here's a few things. The first thing is Jogans. Now, we all know about the Jogans that can be used only once during a battle, and once they've been used, they can no longer be used. And that's a good thing, and that is also a bad thing, because sometimes a Bakugan is not strong enough on his own that we need the support from the Jogans. Therefore, I made a few house rules, like I said, about Jogans, and I need your advice on it. So, hear me out. The first rule is pretty simple. It's the retrieval of the character card from the discard/damage pile. Here how it works. During the battle, you reveal a card from the top of your deck as equal to the point of damage that you receive from your opponent. For an example, let's take the City's card. If my opponent deals me damage with this card, I will gain 1 damage. Unless my opponent uses different other cards from his deck or his hand to be able to damage me more. Based on that, a Jogan card can be revealed because it's part of your base deck. And if the Jogan card is revealed during your damage, you can no longer use your Jogan because the card is now inside the discard pile and cannot be retrieved, due to the fact that the deck cannot be reshuffled. But of course, some cards help you retrieve card from your discard pile, so of course I take that in account, but don't worry, this will still work whatever you do. So here it goes. If, for an example, during my battle, during the damage count, I reveal my Jogan card, and it's now inside of my discard pile. I can no longer use my Jogan, but with this house rule, I could retrieve the Jogan character card from the damage pile. Here it goes. Once you reveal your cards, after you reveal all the cards inside of the damage count that you receive. For an example, if I only receive 1, I reveal 1, and then it's my Jogan, it's inside my discard pile. Once inside my discard pile, I could decide to choose a card from my hand, to discard it, and then retrieve my Jogan character cards. But only after the damage count has been dealt. Like that, it will make the game a little bit more fair and just not stop. For an example, if you choose to take a flip card and then you place it at the end or whatever, doesn't matter. This way will provide you to be able to use your Jogan card no matter what the situation happens and be able to retrieve it. Of course, this is not, like I said, an official rule, this is a house rule. It would be great if it was an official rule, but it isn't. So, for now, let's go with the imagination of house rules for different games and different competition. Of course, only casual competition can abide the house rules. The house rules cannot be put inside of official competition due to the fact that the official rules do not apply them. Therefore. Okay. So, yeah, like I said, to resume. If your Jogan card arrives into your discard pile /damage after damage count, you can discard a card from your hand to retrieve the card and to be able to play your Jogan later afterwards inside the game. But you can only use it once. You can only do that trick once. Therefore, the card, once you retrieve it, if you use it later, it becomes a non-usable card and then need to be put away from your discard pile with your Jogan, meaning that their use has been done and they can no longer be used. Now, here's another rule that applies to Jogans. If you have a Bakugan that is not strong enough on his own, you need to add a little bit more power, a little bit more oomph to it. Therefore, you will use your Jogan or your cards from your deck to be able to enhance the power of your Bakugan to make sure to be able to land a hit. Let's take, for an example, this Gilator card. If I play with Gilator, he has only 400 BP power. There mean that depending on which Bakugor he lands on, he's able to enhance his power, of course, and depending on which card I could play with my deck, and from my hand actually, he could also enhance his power and abilities. But here's the thing. If, for example, you have this Gilator, who is only 400 B power, and you want to make sure that the attack actually lands, you can mix them both. Here how it works. You will still summon your Jugan normally by paying 1 of cost, or depending on how many energy you have to pay for it, and it will become the ally of your Bakugan. But, here's the thing. The ally can only be applied to one Bakugan during duel, bringing back a little bit more of the Bakugan trap rules that were inside of Bakugan Uvestroya era, meaning that your Jugan will still be active on the field, but only for the Bakugan who is paired with. Not with all of your Bakugan, just one. To add a little bit more oomph, because if, for example, you miss your roll with your Bakugan, normally you will use either a reroll card or you will use your Jugan card to be able to summon your Jugan and have the chance to not take damage for yourself, but do damage to your opponent. That rule of the pair will still be active in that way. You have to pay 1 to be able to use your Jugan, but your Jugan will still be open on the field. Sorry. So, in a way, you have your cards like this, your Jugan is open and ready to be put into battle, but if you miss your roll with Gilator, you could either use a reroll to be able to reroll your Gilator and be able to open it, or whatever other Bakugan you use. I use Gilator because I put out this one, so that's why element base. Because yes, this is another rule. This is another thing that will come afterwards. So yeah, your Jugan will still be open and be able to be paired with Gilator on the battlefield, or you could use your Jugan alone. But here's the thing that makes it a little bit more fair. If you use your Jugan alone without the Bakugan partner, after that turn, that Jugan disappears and cannot be longer used, meaning that you lose your partner and this card goes away. It doesn't go into the discard pile, it goes away. It goes on the side of the deck or whatever, it's bind and can no longer be used. It's out of play. So, if your Gilator opens, and then you want to add more power because the Bakugan of your opponent has more power than you, then you could pay the 1 and open your Jugan, or put it on the field if the Jugan was already open. Then you could add, of course, the Bakugor power that your Bakugan gets and not the Jugan gets, because that makes it a little bit more fair. And you could add, of course, power due to the cards inside your hand that come from your deck. I know that doesn't seem to be fully clear, but in a way, to resume it a little bit faster, a little bit more correct, a Jugan could be paired with a Bakugan to add more power to that Bakugan. The Bakugor that the Jugan possesses is not active during that period of time. If you paired up your Bakugan with a Jugan, and your Bakugan doesn't open, but you still want to use your Jugan, after the Jugan has been used, it can no longer be used. It will be put inside of the bind zone, kinda. Another way, the card can no longer be used. It will be discarded from your discard pile, it will be discarded from the use of your deck. The card will just disappear and the Jugan can no longer be used during the entirety of your duel. But if your Bakugan's open and you want to use your Jugan, you pay the amount of energy to summon the Jugan, and then you add the power, the base power of your Jugan to your Bakugan and his Bakugor. Not the Bakugor of the Jugan, just the Bakugor of the Bakugan. If that makes sense to you, I'm happy, because, yeah, it makes sense to me. So, this surrounds the rules about the Jugan and the pairing. Now, the elemental pairing. Here's the thing. If you use a Jugan with a Bakugan of the same element, you can pair them. If it's not from the same element, you cannot pair them. The only exception to that rule is with fusion Bakugan. So for example, I want to use my Arcleon with this Dragonoid X Arlus. I can, due to the fact that Arcleon is a Pyrus and Dragonoid is now Pyrus and Aurelus. But that's the only exception. If, for example, I use Arachnia, I have to use it either with the Bakugan that's used with Eos and another element, or a pure Eos Bakugan. I cannot pair it with another Bakugan other than this, under the base element of the Jogan. So, on that, of course, it goes with the idea of elemental logic, due to the fact that you cannot use, like, for example, oh, I'm gonna use an Aquos with the Pyrus Bakugan. No, doesn't work. You can still use different Bakugan inside of your deck, that doesn't change anything. But your Jogan has to be the same element as the Bakugan that you pair it with. It cannot be with the different element from your deck. It has to be with the Bakugan that you chose to be worthy, not worthy, but to be the best paired with that Jogan. And like I said, if, for example, I have Aquos Darkus or Ventus Eos or whatever, my Jogan, depending on the element, could pair with the Bakugan that has one of the two elements. For example, like I said, Aurelus and Pyrrhus for Dragonoid can be paired with Titan King and can be paired with Arcleon, but of course only one of them, not both. Due to the fact that the Jogan can be only be called once during a battle, during a duel, and only one can be summoned. So here goes for the Jogans and the house rule about that. Now, the next subject might be not touchy per se, but how could I say that? Weird for all of you out there to actually imagine, or not. Anyways, Fusion Bakugan. Fusion Bakugan, like we know, can only be summoned after paying a certain amount of energy to be able to summon the Fusion Bakugan by character cards. For an example, again because this is the card I have out right now, Dragonoid and Auxiliator Ultra. 800 power base, and to be fused summon you need 8 energy, and only can do 1 damage. Then once you pay the 8 energy, you become Dragonoid X Arlilus Ultra, of course. Able to do 5 damage and 2000 base power. Now, to be able to fusion summon a Bakugan, of course you have to pay the amount of energy. But here's the trick. From the house rule, if you are able to play with the house rule, here's what you can do. First of all, you're gonna need 2 other Bakugans, okay, from the same element as the fusion. And here's the thing, not, for example, 2 other Pyrus Bakugan or 2 Aurelus Bakugan, no. You need 1 Aurelus, 1 Pyrus. So 2 other Bakugan of different energy, elemental energy, but are the same as the fusion. So for example, I use these 2. My elemental Dragonoid, who is 1000 power and has 2 damage able to do, or my just Syndius Ultra with 800 power base and 1 damage. Now, by using these 2 cards, okay, of course it's not Auxiliator, don't worry, that's the point of the idea. You don't need the actual Bakugan listed on the card to be able to do that trick. If you want to be more accurate, you could always use the 2 Bakugan listed on your fusion card, but let's be honest, it's not that big of a deal. Now, when it comes to these 2, okay, here's the thing. To be able to fusion summon your Bakugan without paying the cost of energy, here's what you need to do. You need to discard at least 4 cards from your hand, okay? Because yeah, that will make it fair. That will make it fair. Trust me. You need to discard 4 cards from your hand, and you need to put your 2 other Bakugan card face down, so they can no longer be used for at least 2 turns. Meaning that during that time, you are able to summon your Bakugan, your fusion Bakugan, as much as you want on the battlefield without any problem. And here's the thing, because here's the catch-up. that means that your Fusion Bakugan will still be able to be played. Almost like if you had paid the cost of energy to be able to Fusion Summon it. The difference is, this time, you don't need to pay the cost of energy. You only need to be able to do two things. Discarding 4 cards from your hand and flipping down 2 other character cards that cannot be flipped up back again until the second turn of your Fusion Bakugan being put on the field. But here's the thing. You don't have to roll and open your Bakugan on the field. You just need to use it at least 2 times before being able to use these 2 again. So, let me give you an example. I have my Syndius, whoops, I have my Ultra Syndius Earless and my Elemental Rare Dragonoid. I could use them to Fusion Summon to get my Dragonoid X Aurelus on the field with its 2000 power base and 5 damage. But here's the thing. To be able to do that, I need to sacrifice, per se, my 2 character cards by placing them face down on the field, So these 2 can no longer be used for 2 turns. But during those 2 turns, I'm able to summon my Bakugan fused on the field without any problem, and even if it doesn't open, doesn't change anything. After the 2 turns, I'm able to call these 2 on the field to try to do team attack or to deal damage to my opponent. But here's the thing. The Fusion Bakugan doesn't disappear. It stays on the field as active. Meaning that instead of going from this to this, it will stay like this for the rest of the duel. Of course, that rule might be a little bit more OP than what it looks like, but trust me, it's not that big of a deal, because a lot of Fusion Bakugan doesn't have that many high of a cost to be able to fusion, but there can be still tricky to be used. So, like I said, to be able to have this on the field permanently, you have 2 ways. First one, you pay the energy. So you wait to have 8 cards in your energy gauge, and then you use them to Fusion Summon. Or, you discard 4 cards from your hand, and you use 2 Bakugan from different energy but equal to that one. You place them face down, and then you can Fusion Summon this one. And during 2 turns, that is the only Bakugan that you can use. That's what I mean by during 2 turns, they cannot be used. That means that only him can be used during your 2 turns. Meaning that even if you open your Bakugan, that doesn't mean that if you open it 3 times, you have team attack. That doesn't mean anything. You have to be able, again, to open 3 Bakugan to be able to do a team attack. And your Bakugan has to stay open on the field, of course, so you have to win your turn. But basically, that's about it. Now, I had another idea about using the double core strategy, meaning that in house rule, that would be illegal. No more use of double core, because seriously, it puts way too much advantage to someone who has experience or rolling your Bakugan against someone who doesn't. So meaning that it becomes an unfair advantage to you towards your opponent. But this is an house rule. If you don't want to use that house rule because you want to have your double core, do it. I won't force you to not do it. But just stay in mind that if the house rule of the double core is put in motion, that means that you no longer can use your strategy of double core against an opponent that doesn't want you to do it. Of course, some people will just say, do whatever you want. And that's perfectly fine. But these house rules are there to put a little bit more fairness to the game. Most people might not think that, but trust me, it puts on some fairness into the game, so the actual game can be a little more fair, per se. Now, another house rule that I thought about it was the gameplay with the gate cards. Now, we all know about the gate cards. They came back during Bakugan, Jugan Rising, and they are these metal cards that came now with each Bakugan with a design on it with the elemental plus power. Now, these cards actually brought back a little bit more rules back to the actual first game of Bakugan, meaning that it only being put into base power. Here's an example. With this, it's actually kind of the rule from just toy battles. The toy battles are actually full-on rules that Bakugan has. That mean that you use your Bakugan core, your Baku cores, and you roll your Bakugan, and depending on who opens, you win the round. And it's a three round turn, of course, a 3-round duel. So until your Bakugans are able to open, depending on how the thing goes, you win or you lose. Of course, you can always add more points to it. Like, oh, it won't be a 3-turn point; it will be a 10-turn point, for example, depending on how you look. So these actually adds a little bit more oomph to that, because these can actually help you use no longer core abilities, but can still use the ability of your deck and the ability of the power. For example, you could use card that had more power to your Bakugan, but reroll card will be useless due to the fact that the cards, once they open, the battle starts. And of course, that brings back the idea of both Bakugan coming into contact on the same gate card to be able to do battle. Without two Bakugan at the same gate card, the battle doesn't happen and your Bakugan just stays stuck on this card until the battle happens. Let me give you an example. I will take this Pharaoh here that has a magnet on the bottom. If I launch it on this gate card and boom, it opens. Until the Bakugan of my opponent come to the same card as me and open on the card, the gate card won't open and will stay closed until the battle happens. But here's the thing. If, for example, I launch 3 Bakugans and they open on 3 different gate cards and my opponent was not able to do battle to me or whatever, I win by 3 points because I captured 3 gate cards. The gate cards are your points. You could do, like I said, a 3-game point, or you could do until 10 or whatever. The gate cards will be your point count. You capture a gate card by placing it inside of a discard pile and can only be used. You can use as many gate cards as you want, but you have to make sure that your opponent has gate cards as well. If it doesn't, you can play with that rule. But here's the thing, the Baku core could still count with the same ruling. But that's to you to decide if you want to apply those rules or not. Again, because those are house rules. So, there you go, my friend. Here's a few house rules that I thought about it. Maybe that wasn't clear, maybe it was clear for you, I don't know. You could always let me some comment below to tell me if you understand them or not, or if you want more clear words about it, or if you want them written down so it's easier for you to picture. Just let me know and I will do it to make sure that everybody can find their ground on that situation. Therefore, I'll see you next time. See ya!